Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of On the Move at the Caravan Sports Preview Show with Jim Powers. I'm Chris Miller. I'm joined by Jim Powers and our very own Riley Blair, one of the members of the Coach's Box Call It Like We See It podcast and his very own podcast, Full Time Outs. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Doing well.
Doing fantastic. It's hard to believe that it's week 5. I mean, my gosh, it's by and we've already seen some great games, and trust me, this week may be the best week that we've seen because there are just so many outstanding games, all around the area. And a lot of these games are going to say a lot about district placement and a lot of things like that. So this is a pretty big week for everybody on the high school scene.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some really good games this year that we've previewed. There's been good games that didn't even make it to the preview, and there's just good football being played all around the St. Louis metro area and in Jefferson County right now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the schedule the last 4 weeks and you think about it. I mean, we've had some really good matchups, and we talked about this, I think, as a group earlier, that there's a lot of early season games that are really meaningful now with the way they do the point system and stuff. And these teams are being battle tested before they even get into conference play.
And once again, I've said it all along. I've said it for the last couple of years. The bottom line is the coaches are realizing it, and them and their athletic directors, they're scheduling it accordingly. And that's why you're seeing so many great games early because, number one, if you're a small class school, you want to play up, look at Valley Catholic. They open up with a Class 6 and then a Class 5, and then they play a Class 4. So in stacking some wins, that's going to give you a leg up when it comes to when district points are, now that district points are starting to come out. Those are big games. And now you look at inter-district play. I mean, you look at Festus and Hillsborough this week. You look at CBC, the Smet. Those teams all jockeying for top seeds in their districts, and it's games like this week that will go a long way to keep them prepared as they start to move through, because believe it or not, we're less than 5 weeks away from the start of district play.
It's just crazy to think about that. It's almost there. I mean, again, we've mentioned this before, Jim. We get this point in the season, I get happier because it's nice and cool, and that means that there's basketball going to be played. But let's talk more about football. Let's stick with those things, and let's talk about our games that we previewed last week and kind of look and see at some of those scores real quick. You had Bishop DeBerg. They didn't get a chance to win 2-0. They lost to Windsor 51-14. Jefferson, they beat Pius Pius, they beat them 28-18. That was a real big matchup of undefeated teams. Then you had the annual rivalry between Hillsborough and North County. Didn't quite make very good of a game because Hillsborough dominated. They won 48-0. Kirkwood, they also blanked their opponent in Hazelwood Central 17-0. Coach Macklin wins the former NFL player turned head coach game matchup that we had. Marquette knocking off Eureka 28-14. I think that was a big upset. I mean, we all know that Marquette was pretty good. We've talked about them this year, and we knew that they were on the verge of doing some big things, and beating Eureka was obviously big. And then Edwardsville, they showed that they are the powerhouse, defeating O'Fallon 47-14. So, Jim, why don't we quick recap on these games real quick?
Well, Windsor needed that win. DeBerg coming off of a great victory over Afton to break that 28-game losing streak. But, Windsor got out to a fast start, took advantage of a couple turnovers, and they were off and running, and DeBerg couldn't bounce back. You talk about that R7 Pius game. Pius had some opportunities, but they're playing like they did a few years ago, and they got a great quarterback. I mean, this young man is not getting the accolades right now that he should be, and he's going to be a lot of fun to watch here as we get towards the latter part of the year. But right now, they've got the leg up in conference play. I think the big game, you mentioned Kirkwood, look at what their defense has done since that opening week loss to the Smack. Their defense has stood on their heads, basically, and has just played absolutely. And the shutout with Central was big. Marquette Eureka, it's not that big of an upset because Marquette is really, really good. And Marquette needed that victory. They needed to keep moving forward. That loss to Summit a few weeks back. Now Eureka, they've lost back-to-back games, and you don't normally see that out of the Wildcats. So they've got to kind of find their footing a little bit, especially in that brutal district that they're in over in Class 5. Side Eureka, Edwardsville, they just do what they do, and they took O'Fallon to the woodshed. That game was not even close. Their quarterback Cleary is as good as it gets. He's got some great receivers, and this Edwardsville team is a lot of fun to watch. They get the big one in a couple weeks against Eastside, and that will be the determining factor for the Southwestern Conference, and it'll be interesting shakes out.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, here's your prize. You get to play East St. Louis. Congratulations. But and again, we've mentioned it. Can't say this enough. I don't know a lot about Illinois football. I know that those three schools are always good, and it's the winner of these two. They get to play East St. Louis for the conference title. So should be, again, you're hoping for a good game, and we did see a few good games here. I do think the Marquette. I mean, I agree with you. I think Marquette winning wasn't a big upset, but given the fact of where one's ranked and where one is, but I think Marquette's they're right there knocking on the door, and it only shows how good of a team Rockwood Summit actually is.
Right, without a doubt. And then, Riley, I forgot to mention the Hillsborough game. The Hawks just go down and they took North County to the woodshed. I mean, that game got late, and the Hawks just pounded on. And this Hillsborough team, number 3 in the state, they're playing every bit of the part of that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at that game last week, and everybody was looking forward to that game matchup. And Hillsborough rode into town and just took care of business early, and it wasn't even a game in the second half. And so, that Hillsborough team is a dangerous team, and it'll be interesting to see their matchup this week.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll jump right into the rankings here in a sec. And I forgot to mention this, and it'll kill me because he is the exclusive sponsor of our show.
Yes, he is.
But this show is brought to you by Wiley Agencies, multiple policies, one agent. You can call Sean Wiley. He can take care of you today. You can call him at the Festus office at 636-764-6294 or the Hillsborough office at 636-333-9903. And guess what? He can take care of you. He takes care of me. He's my agent. He's a guy that I can call up and be like, hey, I need this done, or what's this? And he's always there. He's a great dude, so make sure you check out Wiley Agencies if you're looking for multiple policies under one roof. He's the guy to call. And we'll jump right into the Class 6 polls. And Jim, you can talk a little bit about those. So there wasn't a whole lot of movement except at the bottom. So Jim, what's going on with the polls here?
Yeah, not a lot of movement because everybody basically won. Rockhurst goes on the road down to Bentonville and gets a monster victory against one of the top teams in Arkansas. Oak Park wins. Jackson moves up a spot. They stay in 8th. Seckman moves up one spot. 4-0 Joplin lost to Webb City. That's not a bad loss, but still, you got to keep it there. But then when you look up top, Lee Summit North doing what they do. CBC doing what they do. Liberty North still winning down in the southwestern corner of the state. So not a lot of moving and shaking there. But the thing that you got to watch out for is you've got some teams that are on the bubble. St. Louis U High, they're on the bubble right now. You've got a Marquette team that's back on the bubble. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Howe also received votes this past week. They kind of got back to what they like to do, and that's win football games. But not a lot of movement in 6, but you've got side just chomping at the bit for somebody at the bottom of this ranking to lose so that they can slide in and get ranked in the top 10.
Yeah, and having a bad loss in the polls is not good. And that you said it right. Webb City winning against Joplin, that's a good loss to have. But you also have a team like Lee Summit West. They're sitting 4-0. They also receive votes, and it's going to see who's going to keep winning out. And it's not just about the polls; it's about getting those higher seeds and hosting those home playoff games. And if we look at Class 5, throw it up here in a sec. There it is, Jim. Class 5s, there's a little movement.
Yeah, you know what? And you kind of expected a little bit of movement this week. You know, Ritter, they take care of their business. Webb City with a nice victory over our Class 6 team. Green Valley doing what they do. Halley stayed where they were at, even though they pushed Ritter to the edge.
Yeah, they did.
One possession game at the end. Halley scores, goes for 2, misses the 2-point conversion. Ritter escapes with a 1-point win, you know, in that situation. Lebanon playing well. Platte County stays right where they're at. MICDS moves up a spot. Nice victory for them, but they've got Lutheran North on the horizon. Eureka was the big fall this week as they drop all the way down to 9, and Rockwood Summit still hanging right there at 4-0. I still think they should be a little bit high, and I actually put them ahead of Eureka in my ballot because I really think this team is not going to lose the rest of the way. They are playing incredible football right now. And, you know, when you look at how these things are all shaken out, it's looking like this Class 5 grouping is going to be absolutely a gauntlet to get through when we hit districts.
Yeah, and you have Capital City and St. Dominic both that receive votes. They're right there in the mix. And there are some other good Class 5 schools that are right there, you know, knocking on the door of getting some votes. And, you know, when you start having those losses, kind of like, you know, you have Platte County has a loss, and then you have Republic has a loss. Eureka has 2 losses. I mean, you can't have those bad losses and expect to remain in the rankings unless you're losing to somebody who's pretty good. We saw what DeSmet did last year, hanging around in the polls and having a record that's not just like some world beating record. They're playing some really good competition, and you can't have those bad losses.
No, without a doubt, and that's the big thing. When you look at some of these losses, they're not bad losses whatsoever, and that's the key. Is you if you lose to a big ranked team, and Riley, you know this as well as I do, it kind of keeps you hanging on a little bit. It keeps you right where you want to be, or maybe dropping a couple spots. But, you know, that you have no right losing to, then that turns into an issue. And Riley, we've seen that a lot of times, you know, with the polls and even, you know, in conference play. You got to win the games that you're supposed to win or hang with the teams that you're supposed to hang with.
Yeah, and that's all about scheduling too. And you look at the scheduling of those teams; they know they're going to be good. They expect to want to be good, so they're going to put them in the best position to play against some quality teams, to put themselves in a position to maybe have a little early success and knock off one of those teams that maybe they shouldn't have, or play with a team that maybe they felt like, hey, we couldn't have beat them, but we played with them and within a touchdown or whatever. So I think that scheduling part of it makes a really big difference early in the year. When you get down to the late part of the year, you're playing your conference games, the games that you already going to have to play a year in and year out. You may have some good competition in there, but you'll see that in rankings start to kind of slowly start beating off, and not teams dropping off, you know, as bad because they're playing some teams that are in their conference year in and year out that they know a lot about.
Yeah. And talking about moving on to Class 4. Class 4, it again, we have a nice little setup for one of our preview matchups, but not a lot of movement except at the bottom.
Yeah, once again, Lutheran North taking care of their business. They've got up here on the horizon with Maryville and also with MICDS. You have Smithville doing what they do. Hillsborough stays right where they're at. And this is exactly where I put them. I kept them in that 3 slot. I don't think right now, you know, because of Smithville's loss, that loss was a really good team in Platte County a couple weeks ago. I think Hillsborough is right where they want to be. But then you start to look at the shuffling down below. And, you know, Festus moves from 10 to 9. Bolivar drops down after losing to Nevada. So once again, a little bit of shuffling at the bottom of this thing, but 2 Jefferson County schools ranked in the top 10, along with Lutheran North. That's a pretty good representation of the football here on this side of the state in the St. Louis metro area. And we've talked about this before, Chris, and Riley, you can chime in on this. Jefferson County, you've got 3 ranked teams, and I'll tease it, you've got a 4th that received votes in Class 1 in Crystal City. I mean, come on, people got to start understanding how good the football is down in Jefferson County right now.
As much as it pains to say for me to say that after that St. Pius Jefferson game, Jefferson's 4-0, and how they didn't receive any votes. Jim, you're on that panel. I'm pointing at you a little bit. That that way our county gets represented. I mean, you got Seckman, you've got Hillsborough, you've got Festus, you've got Crystal City. It's receiving votes. They're sitting at 3-1. Jefferson's 4-0. I mean, we have a good representation of almost all the classes in high school football right here in our county. So we've got good football.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. And, I think that it's just been gradually year in and year out getting better, where there's not just one or two that are decent. We've got a handful, if not more than a handful, that are year in and year out now having success and building a program. And so it'll be interesting to see how, this next few weeks go, because a lot of these teams are going to see each other in a head-to-head matchup that are these, ranked teams in Jefferson County and around the area. So it'll be a fun next few weeks for this seeding process, I'm sure.
I'm going to defend myself real quick. And you knew I was going to do that. No, and you're exactly right. Here's the thing. Right now, Jefferson, where they're at, yes, they're on the brink. And in fact, they are on what we put in our teams to watch. They're the number 1 team to watch right now. And believe me when I tell you, they keep winning. But you also have to understand the teams that are in that top 10, who some of those losses are to. And in the top 10, the losses that are happening are not bad losses. There's never a good loss, but they're not losses to where you got to dump somebody, 5, 6, 7 spots and tumble them out. So our 7's right there, and Pius is going to be right there too. If they keep winning, they keep doing what they're doing. That I'm telling you, that district is setting up between our 7 and Pius. And no disrespect to the other schools, that district is setting up very nicely for those 2 to be 1 and 2, and let the dice roll in November when they're going to match up. But our 7 and Pius are both, once again, Jefferson for me. They're the number 11 team, kind of waiting to see what everything shakes out with some of those other teams, because those other teams have some big games coming up as well over the next couple of weeks. Jefferson will find their way. As long as they continue to win, they will find their way in the top 10.
Yeah. And we're going to go ahead and jump into our quick commercial break. You are watching On the Move with the Caravan Sports Preview Show with Jim Powers. We'll be right back.
Captain of the Pee Wee football team. We may be small, but we are
mighty,
annoying. And you are so tired from playing defense against us that your focus is about to ride the bench. Woo! Go, go, go. Thanks, Mom.
Bye.
Come on, come on. And if you have cut rate car insurance, then not even a Hail Mary will save you from paying for this. So get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Mayhem is everywhere. Are you in good hands?
Are you tired of boring sports talk shows? Then tune in to the Coach's Box. These guys don't just talk sports. They talk about whatever the heck they want to talk about. Watch new episodes of the Coach's Box each week for free on Facebook, YouTube, or the Streamline Sports app.
It's just like that music just cuts off a little too short for whatever reason. Anyway, welcome back to On the Move with the Caravan Sports Preview Show with Jim Powers. I'm Chris Miller.
Who's the guy that runs that? Who's the guy that cuts that off? I don't know who he is.
Let's fire that guy. Let's just fire him. He sucks. He sucks. This show is brought to you by Wiley Agencies. For multiple policies under one roof, you can have one agent. His name is Sean Wiley. Give him a call today. Numbers are up at the top. I don't have to read them to you. You can read, I hope, because guess what? We are going to hit right into our – go ahead, Jim.
No, real quick, before we move on, and I'm going to jump off football for a quick second, but, yesterday afternoon, a great accomplishment, great honor was bestowed to Bryant Wright, the boys country coach over at Festus. He was named the 22-23 Coach of the Year by the Missouri State High School Activities Association, and that's a terrific honor. Look at what he has done with that program over at Festus, and just been terrific. And also Zach Young, the volleyball coach up here at Lafayette, after their state championship last year, and they're undefeated this year. He was named the girls Volleyball Coach of the Year by Misha. And then the tennis coach over at St. Joe's was named the tennis coach of the year for the girls by Misha. So those are great honors. And those honors don't come, as we all know, you've got to earn, especially when you get state recognition like that. So congratulations to all three of those phenomenal coaches here in the metro area for earning Coach of the Year honors by Misha and the NFHS. Absolutely.
I mean, when we don't get into coaching to get any kind of recognition. We do it for the kids, we do it for the community, we do it for the school, and we pretty much take the back seat, but it's always good to give that kind of credit when credit is due.
Absolutely.
And all right, so now let's jump right into it. Okay, Jim, got to put that in the notes next time. That's my fault, though. I didn't ask you those things. I should have said, "Hey, anything else you want to put in there?" But that was a great shout out. My bad. I'll take the onus on that one.
I'm glad I'm not the only one taking a bullet this week. Come on now.
Just this week, right?
This week.
Right. All right, our first matchup. First matchup features an I-55 rivalry game as St. Pius X Lancers make a short bus ride north to take on the Herculaneum Black Cats. After losing last week 28-18 to conference rival Jefferson, as we mentioned, the Lancers will look to bounce back and will rely on junior running back Justin Lane, who has been a consistent part of the St. Pius X offense, racking up 462 rushing yards and 9 total touchdowns this year. Herculaneum has tried to avoid dropping their fourth game of the year after losing last week to St. Vincent 40-0. The Black Cat offense has struggled this season, scoring 20 total points on the year and have been shut out the last 2 weeks. St. Pius X have won the last 5 games against Herculaneum, including last year's matchup 13-6. So, Jim, what's your thoughts on this one?
This is a big game for Pius to kind of bounce back a little bit. They need the victory to keep moving. Herky, on the other hand, they've got to figure out the offensive side of the ball. And, I know they lost a lot from last year. And when the kids that they lost from last year, you've got to be able to fill those shoes a little bit and be able to do some stuff. And Herculaneum hasn't been able to kind of fill those shoes. And then defensively, they're just running some teams that are playing really, really well on offense. But I love what Pius Lane is terrific. The quarterback is just unbelievable. James is just really, really good. And once again, if you're Pius on the table, you got to hope that R7 loses down the line, and you can try to possibly get a co-championship in the conference. But also, you've got to continue to win to get district points. And so, hate to say it, I'm going to go with Pius right now. I think it's a big, big game for them. And I really think that they're going to take care of their business because they really, really need a big bounce back after the loss last week.
Right, and me, I got to root for the home team, and Coach Jarvis, who's also a member of the coaches box, is one of our. He is a Herculaneum football assistant coach, so he's not going to want to hear that, but that's okay. But anyway, I won't say any more about the game. I don't want to give anybody bulletin board.
I'll take the shots on this one, guys. I mean, but it's a great rivalry game. There'll be a huge crowd. Both communities are going to come out to support. It's going to be a fun atmosphere, but I just think Pine at another step ahead of what Herky is. Now, Herky, they're going to turn some stuff around. They've got some games coming up that are going to be winnable games, but right now, the way this thing is shaking out, Pius knows that they've got to get some wins and stack them up here over the next 3-4 weeks to get those district points because they know R7 is going to be right there with them district-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll move on to our next matchup because it features a non-conference battle as Rockwood Summit takes on the host Lindbergh Flyers this week. The Falcons won a big conference matchup last week against Parkway North, 39-27, behind the play of senior running back Elijah Stevens, who carried the ball 35 times for a career-high 245 yards and 5 touchdowns in the game. Congratulations to that young man. Lindbergh comes into this matchup 2-2 after losing last week to Pattonville, 36-31. Despite being at 500, the Flyers' running game has been a big positive for the team, averaging 239 yards per game on the year, with most of the load being split between a pair of seniors, running back Victor Wheaton and quarterback Owen Norman. Rockwood Summit won last year's matchup with Lindbergh 28-6. So, guys, what's our thoughts on this matchup right here?
Summit now.
I look at it. Go ahead, Jim.
Riley.
Go ahead. No, looking at this Rockwood Summit team. I mean, they're a really fun team to watch, and the last few years they've been a really quality program, and you going into this game, looking at the big picture, I think that they're definitely the favorite in this matchup. But nonetheless, I mean, Lindbergh is definitely no slouch in this situation. When you're averaging 289 yards on the ground, you're a pretty tough team to beat. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the end. But I do think that Summit has the edge in this one.
When you look at what Rockwood Summit is and what they do, a lot of it revolves around Elijah Stevens. And he actually set the school record for touchdowns, career touchdowns last week. This young man is a special talent, and he's turning in to be the best running back in the metro area right now. And, they lean a lot on him. But Summit's also been leaning on their defense. And they ran into a really talented team last week that's been, under the radar. They were 3-0 going into that game last week, and it was a great battle. First half was tight, but then Summit was able to distance themselves a little bit. But Elijah Stevens is as good as it gets as the running back. You look at Lindbergh, and they've had some great years. They've really flipped that program around, and Norman, the quarterback, does a nice job in managing the game, getting kids in the right spots, and making the calls at the line that he needs to. But a little bit too much for him. Lindbergh, they're looking to get a victory in this thing, but I really like Summit in this. And once again, there's not a lot of games on the schedule going out for Summit that I see them being an underdog or losing. I think they can run the table if they continue to do what they are doing.
Yeah, and, Stevens is a major, major part of what they do. But let's not forget, they have a pretty good quarterback in senior Grant Gibson. He's got 10 touchdowns and only 1 interception on the year. And when you have a guy who can run the ball and then you can still make some 3rd and shorts, some 2nd and shorts, and you got a quarterback who can throw it, you can't put everybody in the box because that gives you more balance. And they are a very dangerous team. As you said, they could definitely run the table.
Yeah, without a doubt. And that's the fun thing too. And I keep saying it. Eric Stewart, if you look at the body of work over the last 4 years, Eric Stewart, year in and year out, has got those kids on another level at Summit. And I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. And it's a shame because of what the program that they have built. I mean, they've got over 100 kids out, between, all 3 of their programs in the school. Then they've got another 130 in their feeder program. That's how you turn programs into winning, successful programs. You have those types of numbers. You look at Webb City. You look at Harrisonville. You look at what Joe Bacon's done up at Zumwalt North. They've built programs, and that's exactly what Stu's done at Summit, and it's great to see. Once again, I don't think he gets the credit that he really honestly deserves.
No, and I gotta say, I think they are a fun team. We end up always previewing their games, I feel like, but that's just because they do such a good job. So we'll move on to our next, because we could talk all day about these guys, because again, coaching's good and the play is good, but we're going to go ahead and cover some more teams here and give some other programs some spotlight here. So our next highlighted game features another non-conference matchup as Parkway North hosts Ladue. Ladue comes into this matchup at 3-1 after knocking off Oakville last week in a shootout 40-33. The Rams offense got a surprise boost from senior Richard McIntosh, and again, I always say, if I mess up a kid's name, I apologize. Tell me, I'll fix it. Who made his first start at quarterback and proceeded to pass for 221 yards and 4 touchdowns and gained 68 yards on the ground and a score last week. As mentioned in the last preview, Parkway North took a loss last week to Rockwood Summit, 39-27. The Vikings also had a player making his first start at quarterback last week. Junior running back Messiah Smith, who leads the team in rushing this year, made the start and threw for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns, and also carried the ball 24 times for 170 yards on the ground and another score. Parkway North is looking for some revenge, though, after losing last year to Ladue 56-28. And I'm not sure the circumstances behind the quarterback changes last week and if that'll carry on to this week, but both teams should feel pretty confident given the performances of both players. What do you think about that, Jim?
You know what the bottom line is? Ladue, McIntosh didn't start. McIntosh came in the second quarter after their starting quarterback, Bo Dolan, got hurt. And they were actually down a lot and came battling back and ended up, getting a touchdown late, getting a field goal to get the victory. And that was a big, big win for Ladue because they were kind of shuffling their feet. And the way they played in the first half of that game last week, I really thought, okay, victory over Lindbergh. Now they're going to lose. And Oakville is no slouch. Oakville, they've really started to turn the program around a little bit. So, it wasn't going to be a big surprise, but still, you had to win that game. And McIntosh coming in and getting the job done was terrific. Then you look at Parkway North, once again, a team that's been flying under the radar, and they gave Summit everything they wanted in the first half, of that game last week, and then Summit and do what they do, and that's just move bodies around and create space for Stevens. So this game is going to be a battle. It's going to be way closer than it was last year. I'm going to be really interested to see, is Dolan able to go back for Ladue, or they go with McIntosh? What's Parkway North going to do with their quarterback situation? So it'll be kind of interesting to see what these two teams will dial up for this coming Friday night.
Yeah, I didn't know that McIntosh came into the game because when you're looking at the stats, I'm pretty sure that he was the only one who even registered a pass. So when you're looking at it, it's like, well, gosh, this kid just made his first career start. So I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I'm looking at this. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what a great line for a kid who got maybe some slop duty. Coming in, hey, your first game that you actually get some significant playing time. You throw for 200 yards and 4 scores. And you run one in too? I mean, wow, that's pretty good, I'd say.
All in the second half.
This is an opposing coach's nightmare when you don't know which quarterback's going to come in and what game plan. I mean, they may be totally different quarterbacks doing two totally different things, and now you've got a game plan with that in mind all week. And so as a coach, you're definitely thinking, man, what am I game planning for? I got a game planning for 2 different scenarios that really – because you really don't know which one quarterback's going to be in the game or which one's going to start or which one's going to play at all. So a very tough matchup for both teams, really, all things considered.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at Messiah Smith, he's been the guy who's been carrying the water for Parkway North. And then all of a sudden, he's the one who's taking the snaps. And I did see some plays. I watched some huddle highlights. He's taking the snaps. It wasn't like they put him in the Wildcat or anything. He's in shotgun. He's taking the snaps from the center. So obviously there was a decision that had to be made one way or another, whether it was health, whether it was play, don't know. But all of a sudden now you got a dual threat guy in Smith. Obviously, that gave Rockwood a lot of problems because, just like Riley said, he probably didn't have anything lined up for that situation.
No doubt about it. And Riley hit it right on the head. These two coaches are probably thinking to themselves, "Who are we going to see? We got a game plan for 2 different guys of offenses because we don't know who we're going to see." And once again, that is a coach's nightmare.
100%, 100%. All right, we'll move on because again, we could do this all day with some of these games because they are that good. Jimmy did a good job picking games this week.
Absolutely can. The next two we absolutely can spend the next 2 hours talking about.
Absolutely. Jim with the foreshadow here because our next matchup is one that a lot of people have been waiting for here in Jefferson County as Hillsboro makes a short trip east on Highway A to take on Mississippi Red Conference rival Jefferson. Last week, Hillsboro routed North County, as we mentioned before, 48-0 to move to 4-0. The Hawks got another big game from junior quarterback Preston Brown, who threw for 255 yards and 3 scores. Festus also won last week, just manhandling DeSoto 41-0 and improved to 3-1 on the year. After losing in week 2 to Valley, the Tiger defense has figured some things out as they have given up 7 points in the last 2 weeks. Even though this is always a rivalry game that's circled on the calendar, it has been largely one-sided as Hillsboro has won 12 of the last 14 games against Festus since 2013, including the last 4 matchups. So is Festus breaking the streak, or does Hillsboro continue to dominate this rivalry? Jim, what's up? What's up with this one?
All I'm going to tell you is if you're not there by 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, you may not get a seat for this one. And it's the same thing for the next game that we're going to. Once again, these are big time conference games. This is a game that everybody had scheduled early in the year. You knew Hillsboro was going to be good. Coach Afadale was going to have some talent back for Festus. And, sure enough, I think everybody's kind of hoping that this would be 4-0 versus 4-0. But, Festus loses to Valley, and who doesn't lose to Valley? Except for right now, Seckman. But the bottom line is the way Hillsboro's defense is playing. And Festus D is playing really well as well. I just don't know if Festus offense can put points up on the board against this Hillsboro defense. I think Hillsboro has shown that, yes, they lost some great kids from last year's team, but they also had kids that stepped in and have done a terrific job this year. I really, really like Hillsboro in this game. Festus, even with a loss, I still will rank them in the top 10 because, once again, it will not be a bad loss. Hillsboro, if they lose, guess what? They're only going to drop maybe 1 spot, if any, because once again, you talk about good losses, bad losses, whatever. This is just going to be a knockdown, drag-out, heavyweight battle. I got to give the edge to Hillsboro right now just because of the way that their defense has really stepped up to the plate, especially against the North County. They're a little down this year, but still, that's an offense that can still put points up on the scoreboard. And Hillsboro went down there and shut them out and was able to come away with a big victory. Festus, if they can get the ball going, and I think the biggest thing for them is Festus has got to throw the ball. They're going to have to air things out to test the Hillsboro secondary. If they try to go hat-on-hat up front and try and run the ball, Riley, I don't think they're going to. Hillsboro is just way too big up on that deep line.
Yeah, and I think that, you look at this matchup and on paper, you look at it and you say Hillsboro's got the edge on paper. I think, but if you throw all those pieces of paper out the window and put them on a football field together, a lot of these kids know each other, are really good friends. You put them on a football field and they're smashing each other a little bit, things change. And so I feel like this matchup is going to be a lot closer than what a lot of people think. And I think it's going to come down to who has the ball last in the fourth quarter. I think it's going to come down to that just because of the rivalry, the matchups, the kids know each other. You're going to see some smash mouth football, and which is what it's all about on a Friday night down here in Jefferson County. And it'll be fun to match, but I feel like the team that has the ball last is going to win the game.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. You can throw all the records out. This game's always, for the most part, a competitive game. But these two teams don't like each other. They play hard. Everybody knows each other. They're probably, cousins and uncles, and everybody's been, that's related, that's played in this rivalry game. So there's a lot on the line here as far as bragging rights are concerned, year in and year out. So it's going to be a fun one to look forward to. And again, like Jim said, you better show up about time school lets out. Otherwise, just forget it. you're not gonna get in, or you're gonna have to walk all the way from Hillsboro to get you a spot. So our next game, it features two unbeaten teams as St. Francis Borgia travels to O'Fallon, Missouri to take on St. Dominic. Last week, Borgia dismantled Duchesne 69-18 after putting up, I had to reread that, 41 points in the first quarter. The Knights have had consistent play on both sides of the ball from junior running back linebacker Hayden Wolf, who leads the team in rushing with 335 yards and 5 touchdowns, as well as total tackles with 22. St. Dominic won their Week 4 matchup with Althoff, Illinois, 34-19. The Crusaders will look for another solid performance from senior running back Thomas Pulliam, if I said that wrong, I apologize, who leads the team with 410 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns on the season. Last season, Borgia knocked off St. Dominic 19-14 in their yearly matchup. So, hey, after this one, who stays unbeaten?
Right now, I got to go with St. Dom, but you know what? I never count out the old ball coach down at Borgia in Dale Gildahouse, and you know he dialed some stuff up last year, and they were able to come away getting a nice win. But that also catapulted St. Dom's the rest of the way into the state championship game. Thomas Pulliam is as good as a running back as we're going to see. Really filling those big shoes from Jackson Overton from last year, and he's done a terrific job. You know, St. Dom's going across the river. That also was undefeated going into that game last week. And coming away with a win, that was a pretty big win. Borgia, this is the Borgia teams that we saw back in the early 2000s, you know, late 2000s, where Dale's just got a great defense. They've got kids offensively that can move the football. This is going to be a knockdown drag-out, and I'm going to give the slight advantage to the home team because great crowds always go out to St. Dom in that wonderful facility that they give a slight edge over to the Crusaders to continue their march. And I'm going to tell you what, they win this week, probably going to see them slide into the top 10.
Yeah, you're gonna have to give them some love here because I'm telling you right now, I know that Duchesne lost a lot of kids off last year's team, and they've had some good teams. But you put up 41 points in the first quarter in a high school varsity game. I mean, this isn't 8-man football. That just doesn't happen. There's 3 other guys out there, and that just shows how good they are. I mean, the stats aren't overwhelming because they've had to sub guys out. They're not playing their first string. It's kind of like what Valley was doing a little. I don't want to compare too much, but Valley was playing their guys and then having to pull them. So again, you got a guy like Wolf who's, you know, good running back. He's not getting to play a whole game. He did have a really good game the week before last, statistically wise, 200 yards rushing. But, you know, two-way players, man, I really appreciate kids who just can go out there and they can do both. I mean, and you got guys like that and you got athletes, and I agree with you. I think whoever wins this game, they're definitely going to get pushed a little bit as far as the voting's concerned. I know St. Dom's receiving votes. Borgia's going to be right there too. And even if they lose this game, I still see that happening.
Absolutely. And by the way, you know, good friend of ours, President of Borgia. I actually am good friends with both guys, Jim Welby of St. Dom's and our good friend Matt Shooty down at Borgia. We got to give both of those guys love because look what schools since taking over as president. They've really, you know, they've done a terrific job in building the culture and getting everybody together. And it's a lot of fun to see St. Dom's and Borgia doing the things that they're doing. You know, now, especially athletically, we know academically it's terrific, but athletically, it's great to see what those guys are doing in setting the culture and setting the standard for what they want those schools to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, and Riley knows we've been around Shooty. We know he does a really good job. He would probably enjoy being on this show, to be honest with you.
Oh, well, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump in our final matchup, which is the matchup of the week. Our final matchup is a Metro Catholic state-ranked showdown as CBC plays host to rival DeSmet. Last week, DeSmet rolled Vianney 53-6, scoring all 53 points in the first half. I mean, good teams, that's what they do. The Spartan rushing attack has been solid this year, averaging 191 yards per game, led by a pair of running backs, senior DJ White and sophomore Jade McCaster. CBC, they come into this one 3-1 after downing Chaminade 56-0. And it's no secret that the Cadets will rely heavily on their senior connection of quarterback Cole McKee and Ohio State committed wide receiver Jeremiah McClellan. I know Jim loves hearing Ohio State. Yeah, I see you over there. No one else can. Good. This week against the Spartans, CBC has won the last 3 matchups against DeSmet, including last year's matchup, 41-28. Are we going to see another CBC win, or is DeSmet ready to upset the 2-time defending champs at home? Jim, what's your take?
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, and this is another one. If you don't get to CBC by 4 o'clock, you're going to be parking down at Mobap. You're going to be parking
Fenton.
Chesterfield. It'd be an unbelievable atmosphere. These two teams know each other extremely well. They both have great playmakers in McKee for CBC, Duff for DeSmet. Both, they've got weapons. When you talk about White, when you talk about McClelland, this game is going to boil down to one thing and one thing only: secondary for both teams. We saw what happened to CBC secondary against Brian, torched, and they're not afraid to admit that they got torched. They lost. They learned a lot from that game. Now you got a quarterback like Duff for DeSmet that can air the ball out. He's got some great receivers. I'll be interested to see how John Merritt is going to attack what they do offensively against that CBC defense. Now you flip the coin. DeSmet has to figure out a way to cover McClellan because they are going to get him the ball any possible way. And you've got to make sure you can't necessarily go man-to-man against him. You're going to have to come up with some Tampa 2 over the top with your safety sliding over. You just can't give him good looks because if you do, you're going to lose, and you're going to lose big. Same thing with special teams. You cannot let McClellan get a punt return. You cannot let him get a kickoff return. He's that dynamic. We mentioned this a couple weeks ago, friends of mine. McClellan is very, very similar to Burton. We see what Burton's doing for Mizzou right now. McClellan is the same type of athlete. You give him the ball, give him space, he could score. This thing is a knockdown, drag out. They're both in separate districts, but I know what's on the table. Whoever wins this game is going to win the MCC, and that's the big bragging rights. You got to give CBC this in front of the home crowd, but will it surprise me if DeSmet walks in there and beats them? Absolutely not. In fact, the last time DeSmet beat CBC at CBC, that was the game on ESPN a few years back, and that was an unbelievable atmosphere.
Yeah, I think this matchup is set up for one of the ages, I think, in my opinion. You look at CBC and their already matchups they've had this season and, going down to Arkansas and playing that, number 1 ranked team in the state and I think top 12, top 15 in the nation, and giving a game really. So this matchup is a fun one. But like you said, it's all on paper right now. And when you get out on Friday night and you're there and you're sitting there watching that matchup, it's a whole different story. Everything changes and everything goes out the window when you get on that football field and they get to hitting each other and enjoying what football is all about, So I like DeSmet in this matchup. I really think that they're going to have the over edge here. And, CBC is still the 2-time defending state champ. So that has a lot to say there too. But I think DeSmet's going to come in here and with all guns a-blazing and take care of business.
Well, DeSmet, they, like you mentioned, Jim, they got big playability from their quarterback. They have a great running game, but that not only can their quarterback run the football, but his receivers are getting big chunks of yardage anytime they catch the ball. So if you try to squash that running game, they're going to throw over the top, and they can light you up pretty quick. I'm going to say that it's going to be, I'll use what Riley said earlier, whoever has the ball last. I'll say whoever has it last, they have the chance of winning. I think that's what's going to happen. Well, I think, though, it's going to be a shootout. I don't see this game being one of those 13-6 grudge matches, and we all end up home at 9:30. I think this wouldn't be one of those really late games that Jim, if you end up going to this, I don't know if you can make it to the studio to record on Friday night.
Thank goodness this starts at 6 o'clock. That's the bonus. So if it does last till 10 o'clock, then yeah, 4-hour game. But you're right. And here's the thing. And the one stat when I announce a game or, either online or whatever, the one stat that I always look at is yards after catch. I look at what Yak is. Both of these two teams have receivers that will get you big chunks of yardage after the catch. You got to minimize that. And whatever team can minimize yards after catch, that's the team that's going to win this game.
Absolutely. Well, it's been another fun one, and could we talk about this all day? We might even spend some more time next week just talking about this one, because I think this one's going to be a fun one. I might try to pull up YouTube and see if I can find it. Again, if we always say this every week, if you get a chance to get out on Friday nights, support these kids, support these programs, watch some football live, and if you can't make it for whatever reason, find a streaming service. We have a lot of streaming services that are free. We have a lot of schools that are putting services. Absolutely, and the schools provide free service, so that way fans, even if it's just a huddle camera going, so that way you get a chance to watch it. I know last night I watched the St. Pius Incarnate Word volleyball game. It was 3-0 Incarnate. They won, but there's a reason why they're the number one team in the state, and I watched that free on YouTube on a huddle cam. It's okay. I got to see everything I need to see. There's all kinds of those out there. Make sure you get a chance to do that. Support these programs. Can't say it enough.
No, without a doubt, and that's the big thing too. A lot of we talk about that game's going to be up on on a Maritime. You look at CBC and DeSmet, that'll be on CBC's network. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you can't get out the way, and plus the weather is going to be absolutely beautiful for Friday night. Get out and support these kids. They work hard day in and day out. And plus two, now the weather's settled in. We're getting great weather nights out there. Go out and support these kids. And if you can't be there, watch it online. There's plenty of free that do phenomenal work. And so please, make sure you support these kids. They deserve it.
Yeah, and the Festus Hillsborough game should be on Streamline Sports. Maritime Sports is going to be the ones doing that. And real quick, we'll give a shout out, Riley. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you sitting in on this one. And don't forget that you guys can have an opportunity to watch Riley's podcast. It's called Full Timeouts with Riley Blair. He's going to be bringing on some great guests. We're lining up some really good coaches, officials, whoever we can get that's going to be good. They're going to be entertaining, because that's what we want to do. We want to bring on some very entertaining people. Riley's going to sit down and have a conversation with those people. And if he didn't already, he's already got one episode out with Hall of Fame coach Ron Rhodes, and that was a pretty good one to watch, Riley.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And like if you're out there and you want to highlight your kids and talk a little bit about high school football, I'd love to have you on my show and talk a little bit about what it means to be for you as a coach and vice versa. So if you're interested in that, hit us up here on Off the Rails Media. We're more than happy to have you on our show and interview you for 30, 45 minutes and take care of business. But I appreciate everything and appreciate you guys having me on today's show. And I enjoyed it and look forward to coming back next week.
Absolutely. Well, if you guys don't have anything, we need to go ahead and close this one down. So appreciate everybody tuning in for another episode of On the Move with the Caravan Sports Preview Show with Jim Powers. I'm Chris Miller. That's Jim Powers. That's Riley Blair. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you guys all next week. Have a great week. This episode of On the Move with the Caravan is brought to you by Off the Rails Media. Life's more fun when you're off the rails.
Are you tired of boring sports talk shows? Then tune in to the Coach's Box. These guys don't just talk sports, they talk about whatever the heck they want to talk about. Watch new episodes of the Coach's Box each week for free on Facebook, YouTube, or the Streamline Sports